Okay, it's going live. Well, welcome back and welcome to a very special panel. This is the first keynote panel of the Middle East and North Africa Smart Construction Virtual Summit, and we're going to start by looking at technology, and specifically we are going to be looking at the next generation of technology, the technology that's going to reshape and reform the way we deliver construction projects in the next 5, 10 years and beyond that. This technology will drive efficiency, will reduce carbon dioxide emissions, it will change the way relationships work within project teams between the different project parties. So what we want to do in this panel is to get some insights on the next wave of technologies, what's coming down the line, and how we should prepare for it and what we can do to accelerate adoption. You can submit questions to the panelists. On the right-hand side of your screens, you will see the tabs. The Stages tab allows you to send in questions to the panelists. So on the right-hand side of your screen, you can send in questions using the Stages tab, and I will field the questions to the panelists. Now, we have a wonderful panel of speakers. I will just introduce them to you before we get into the discussion. So Dr. Khaled Hazmi is the director at the National Center for Robotics and the Internet of Things and Technology at King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology in Saudi Arabia. Welcome, Dr. Khaled. Majid El Hawary is the Chief Information Officer at ASGC, one of the best known contractors in the region, based here in Dubai. Ali Ismail is the Building Information Modeling, BIM, expert at Dubai Municipality. And Dubai, as most of you will know, has really sort of blazed a trail in technology adoption in the region, and particularly BIM, over the past few years. So Ali will be able to tell us about some of the regulatory aspects coming down the line. And joining all the way from California, I'm delighted that we have Theo Agelopoulos, who is the Senior Director for Architecture, Engineering and Construction Design Strategy at Autodesk. And Autodesk is the giant of construction technology. I'm sure just about everybody will know Autodesk. So welcome, Theo. It must be very early in the morning or late yesterday evening for you over there. So thank you for the effort. It's impressive. So as I said, you can use the tabs on this side, isn't it? On the right-hand side of your screen, the Stages tab, to send in questions. Now let's get started. Dr. Khaled, thank you for your time. Saudi Arabia is by far the biggest market in the region, and over 50% of the planned projects in the region are in Saudi Arabia. You have the Vision 2030 structural reform program, and you have all of these giga projects, the NEOM project, the Red Sea project, the Qiddiya project, the Ria Gate, the list goes on and on. A lot of money being invested. It has to be delivered efficiently. It has to be delivered on time. What are the key technologies that are going to help the Public Investment Fund and the Saudi government deliver all of these projects? What can we expect, do you think?
Yes, thank you, Richard. Before I start answering the question, I would like to thank the organizers of this event for giving us this opportunity to participate in this amazing panel. Back to your question, the digital landscape is changing at an ever increasing speed. The question for organizations is no longer if they are going to digitalize their work space, but when and how are they going to keep up and adapt with ever-evolving technologies. So the question is what is the construction technology? Construction technology is a collective term for a type of technologies that have specific use within the construction industry. Examples of these include smart machinery, automated robots, virtual reality, 5G and IoT, and others. Let me highlight here some of the emerging technologies that will impact the construction industry. There are many significant new technologies that will reshape the construction technology in the next few years if they are being used the right way. I would say big data is the one of the most important term in the nowadays in the emerging technologies, artificial intelligence and machine learning. Here I'm just giving the technology names. However, we can elaborate more on how these technologies can be used in the construction technologies on the construction sector and other sectors. Internet of Things is also another important technology that nowadays are being used. Robotics and drones. The advancements in the telecommunication sectors, like 5G, nowadays we're hearing 6G, virtual reality and augmented reality also will have a great impact on the construction sector. 3D printing as well. Other, I would call it infrastructure technologies like mobile and cloud technology. Blockchain is also another technology. All of these technologies are created and adapted to aid different industries in improving working conditions, efficiency, improve health and safety, and many others.
Dr. Khaled, thank you for that. That is a very long list of technologies. We're getting a bit of feedback from I think it must be coming from microphones on people's computers. If people can put themselves on mute whilst we go around the group, hopefully that will make a difference. And if the producer is listening, maybe he can control the mute function.
Yes.
Thank you. That sounds better. Dr. Khaled, thank you. That was a very long list of technologies, all of them incredibly important. I am curious to know about the status of adoption for these technologies. So you talked about, for example, IoT and big data. My sense is that is kind of becoming to be quite established. But you also mentioned artificial intelligence, which my sense is that's still a bit down the line. So what is the sort of different status of these technologies in terms of construction usage?
Good. That's nice. Here, if we look to these technologies, I believe all of them are buzzwords within the last few years. Some of them, they are mature. Some of them are mature but for specific tasks. If we could, like among the list that I mentioned earlier, like mobile and cloud technologies. Mobile and cloud technologies already been there for 10 years. We see that many companies nowadays started to provide the cloud technologies as a service to different sectors. So the cloud technologies by itself as a technology is mature. Whether it's mature, I mean in terms of the infrastructure needed for the other technologies to move forward. Big data is a term that already organizations started to realize the importance of the data. So we see that that we have huge data nowadays being stored, whether locally at the companies or in the cloud. Artificial intelligence and machine learning. There are two types of artificial intelligence. There is strong AI and weak AI. Weak artificial intelligence where a model or a model that is created to do certain task. For example, speech, text to speech or speech to text. We see that Siri on our phone is already matured, can do this task as an AI-packed engine. However, in the next few years, we will start to see the strong AI, where we have a kind of generic AI to do multiple tasks, not only to perform certain tasks. Internet of Things nowadays is, I believe, it's mature to a certain level. The adoption of this technology varies from sector to sector. However, given the advancements in the telecommunication infrastructures in terms of 5G, that nowadays we see 5G, 6G, we see high speed internet, and we see that connectivity is everywhere. Wherever we go, that we can still be connected to the internet. Since we have the telecommunication infrastructure, then the IoT is already mature. I know that for a sector like construction sector, a new approach of how IoT will be utilized given the limitations or the difficulties within the construction area, that like construction areas you cannot have regular access points. However, nowadays we've seen companies or startup companies that started to come up with IoT and AI-based solutions for the construction technologies. Robotics and drones also, we can elaborate more. I don't want to take long.
Okay, Dr. Khaled, so you've set out some excellent keynote points, and I've got some questions that I wish to put to you in a moment about that kind of the accessibility of data and the regulation of around data. But let's bring in some of the other panelists first. For everyone watching today's panel, you can send in questions to Dr. Khaled or anyone else using the Stages tab on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can see there is a Q&A sort of sub-tab that you can send in your questions. Thanks, Dr. Khaled. I'm going to come to Majid Hawary, who is the CIO for ASGC, one of the biggest contractors in the region, based here in Dubai. I know that ASGC over several years now has invested quite heavily in digital innovation and technology innovation in its processes. So, Majid, if you could tell us a little bit about, I guess, a little bit about your experiences. Innovation means taking risks, and so some things must have worked, some things might not have worked. So I'd be curious to hear about that. But then, more important, what do you see as the key technology that you want to invest in, in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah, okay, sure. So thank you, Richard, for the discussion, and thank you, Dr. Khaled, for this impressive description of all such long of technology. I believe all this long list is part of the fourth industrial revolution, which everyone can see everywhere. This is the every hour discussion everywhere. So generally the world moved from the steam to electricity to automation, then to the age of internet. Then we came up with the fourth industrial revolution, which has all these such technology. Unfortunately, none of these technology driven or came from the construction industry. But fortunately, we can add value to the construction industry out of all these technology, considering IoT, big data, connected devices, and all these long lists Dr. Khaled just mentioned is going to add a great value to the construction. Let's go back for the last decade, last 10 years, compare construction in the GCC region in 2010 compared to 2020. 2010, everything was almost normal. We were talking about normal construction industry, some business strategies supported by technology, ad hoc initiatives from people. While what we are discussing now in 2021, we are discussing purely technology is leading the business strategy, not business strategy supported by technology. We cannot imagine that any construction site is not operated through some digital transformation initiatives like document management system, some few IoT devices, data analytics, and such things. So the huge sprint happened to the industry in the region in the last 10 years is really, it's a massive change. Even now we know in the construction industry, many people are part of the construction. It's not mandatory to have like engineering background. People are coming from purely technology aspect. People are coming from data analytics and such things. So how to take this to the execution in construction industry and what is the practicality of implementation? We have tested almost most of those technologies. Definitely BIM is one of the, it's not, we cannot say it's a kind of new technology, it's old technology, but with new implementation. New connected through the different value chain for the construction industry, starting from the initiation, then delivery, and then even after the handing over, going more with the 6E and 7E for the facility management.
If I can just ask you a question on BIM, Majid, is it your opinion now that building information modeling, that is now a basic thing? It's a stand, everyone should have it in Middle East construction, or is it still unusual? Because I get the sense that now it's standard. It's what level of BIM that you're applying that's the question.
I think BIM to the construction industry is like the drawing to any building. You cannot do any building without drawing. The 2D drawing which we used to do.
So the problem then, the challenge then presumably is about everyone being on the same version or the same level. Is that the specification of what BIM you're using?
It's going to happen. Usually you have pushers and leaders and people who take the initiative at the beginning. Governmental entities, big contractors, big developers start, and then we cascade down to the complete value chain for the subcontractors, suppliers, and all these things. So I think within the coming 2-3 years maximum, BIM is going to be the default for everything in the construction industry.
And you also mentioned at the beginning that construction in the past has lagged behind other industries in terms of technology adoption and R&D. Is it your perception, based on your experiences at ASGC and what we have seen in the Middle East construction industry recently, is it your perception that is changing, that construction companies are now starting to invest in technology and in R&D, or is it still being left to companies like Autodesk to do that work and then you just buy off the shelf?
Good question. Adopting technology, it's not an option anymore for developers and for contractors. And so Khaled mentioned the portfolio of some big projects in Saudi Arabia. You cannot allow anyone to be there without using the technology. So how it's going to happen, how we will invest on this one, at least if we are not investing in R&D for technology, we are trying to be early adapters, doing a kind of proof of concept, pilot projects to implement. Usually construction is usually criticized of its low profit margin compared to other industries, and when it can move from the developer perspective to the main contractor perspective, is the one who's taking the vast majority of the risk at the execution with the lowest profit margin. So investing in R&D could be tough, but now it is not an option. We have to do it. It's part of profit improvement is to invest to do things much efficient using the technology. Okay. Well, thank you, Majid. I've got loads more questions for you, but I would like to bring Theo into the conversation now. Theo Agelopoulos, thank you very much for dialing in from California. You are the Senior Director for Architecture, Engineering and Construction Design Strategy at Autodesk. Autodesk is one of the giant names in technology, particularly in the construction sector. So I'm very curious to ask you two questions. Firstly, the base question about what's going to happen in the next few years. What are the new technology advancements that we can look forward to? But the second question, I'm curious about how you see the Middle East
compared to the North America or Europe in terms of adoption of technology, the construction industry, I mean. So perhaps if we can start with the first one about technologies and then look at the market second.
Yeah, happy to respond, and thank you for having me, by the way. So,
it's a pleasure.
I think Dr. Khaled did a really nice job of kind of summarizing. It's not one technology or another. I think it's really a combination of technology, and it really depends on what problem you're trying to solve. And I think Majid did a really nice job too of kind of summarizing the fact that I think what's happened from a technology perspective is 10 or 15 years ago, companies like Autodesk were building products like Revit or Civil 3D or whatever, and it was really a content creation tool that was creating 3D models to kind of help optimize the project delivery process. I think where we are today is because of the cloud, because of big data, because of emerging technologies like AI and machine learning, we're moving now to platforms and data, and as a result of that, companies like ASGC. And I totally agree with Majid, is they're going to use that platform and they're going to use their intellectual property and build things on top of platforms that differentiates them and helps them optimize their construction execution, right? So I think the big shift we're seeing is from products to platform, from files to data, and as a result, and then I would say 10 years ago, construction companies began hiring architects, engineers to do things like virtual, design and construction, and do, 4D and 5D and 6D, and now we're seeing, construction companies hiring computer scientists to code, and to build apps. So
Theo, if I can just follow, just before I forget, you made a point there about, there will be the platforms in the cloud, and then the competitive advantage will be the contractors building on top their own, applications. Are you saying that the contractors will start hiring, you just mentioned data scientists, but also software, they'll start doing software programming and they'll start building on kind of IT applications of their own? Is that what you're describing?
I think it's already happening, right? I think it's already begun. I can tell you from an Autodesk perspective, we have our Forge, developer platform. We already have, both engineering and construction customers that are building their own applications to solve very specific problems. In some cases, they're connecting different types of data together or different types of systems. In other cases, they're building, they're automating repetitive tasks. So I think it's already begun, to be honest. I don't think it's a new thing. I also think,
sorry to keep interrupting you, but what does that mean for, what do those contractors then have to do to be competitive in that landscape? Should they be investing in programmers and the stuff that's not in their traditional areas?
I think the short answer is yes, and I think that trend has already begun. I think what you're seeing now, especially if you think about a large capital project, the burden of the risk tends to fall on the contractor. Okay, so they take the biggest risk. And as a result, they have to mitigate risk, deliver quality. And I think the other thing that's happening on the tail end of that is also the fact that their customer, the owner, is demanding a different, a more sophisticated product, because what they want to do is ultimately optimize the long-term operations of their assets. So the emergence of things like digital twins, for example, is requiring contractors to commission and hand over something that's maintenance ready. So I think you're beginning to see kind of all the way from the designer, the planner, from the designer to the contractor, ultimately delivering a richer, more sophisticated product to their client, because the value ultimately is in the long-term operating cost of that asset. So to answer your question, I think it's already begun. I think companies like Autodesk are trying to build platforms to accelerate that digital transformation. And I think depending on where you are in the world, you see different levels of maturity.
Well, thank you for that, Theo. Now, I've got a question for you that's come in from somebody that's watching, which it's for Autodesk and the sort of companies like you. And it said, the question is, if Autodesk provides a platform for construction companies, is that not cannibalization of your own software business? Or is the reality that if you don't provide the platform, then they will do it anyway? So I don't know. Does that question make sense? I just read it out as it came in.
No, I think it's a great question, right? It's a question that we, in my role, we tackle on a daily basis. I think the reality is that Autodesk, what Autodesk has traditionally done is take, unreachable, expensive technology and make it affordable and scale it to the masses. That's really what Autodesk has done for 40 years, right? The other reality is that Autodesk is never going to be able to build every single application that the construction supply chain needs. So, we want to build, and it's a model we used even on AutoCAD 40 years ago, is we want to build a rich ecosystem of partners, but also provide customers with the ability to extend the platform to solve many different types of problems. So we'll always build certain types of applications to scale into the market, but we also expect customers and partners to build adjacent applications. So I think it actually helps Autodesk. It doesn't disservice Autodesk. Okay,
thank you. Now, we had another question here for you, Theo, about what Autodesk new developments. Maybe you could just mention a couple of sort of headline words now, and then we'll come back to it in a moment. But I've heard of things like generative design and things. What are the sort of things coming down the line, just briefly?
Yeah, so I think we're investing heavily in AI and machine learning. Everything from automating and helping real estate developers make better decisions earlier, as part of the planning process. We're investing very heavily in cloud. Rolling out new data centers, improving, latency, redundancy, privacy. So there's a lot of platform plays. I'd say the biggest thing you'll see in the next probably 5 years is going to be kind of this move from files to data and platforms. I think that's where the biggest transformation is going to happen. And as a result of that, that's why you're also seeing kind of more recently, we just launched a new digital twin platform, which will, again, is a platform for customers to take, adopt, and integrate into some of their project delivery processes. So I'd say they're probably the main areas of investment that we're certainly making. But I would just add one kind of overarching thing. I think the one big thing that's happened in the last 15 years is that the term building information modeling began where the term building was a noun. It meant a physical building, right? What the term building information modeling means today, it's about building a rich information model that connects all aspects of a capital project. So that's the shift we've seen. And so I think that's where we're certainly investing in trying to enable that move.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for that, Theo. Loads of questions have been coming in, but I'd like to bring Ali into the conversation. So, Ali, thank you very much for your patience. So you are Ali Ismail. You are the building information modeling expert at Dubai Municipality. And as I mentioned at the beginning, Dubai has really been at the leading edge of BIM adoption and technology innovation and construction in this region for several years. We just heard, Ali, from Theo and the other speakers about the role of data, the role of BIM, and that kind of ecosystem. And a big part of that is regulation and strategy coming from the government. So could you set out how you see things changing and the role of government in this region? Or I guess you can just talk for Dubai. How do you see things changing? What's coming down the line from your perspective?
Okay. Thank you very much for having me today. Yes, I think before we talk about the role of data and the role of technology, yes, we should focus more on the role of government and regulation authorities and the responsibility she has to lead and push the changes toward adopting technologies and showing world through designing strategic plans and also to maybe funding and raising the education and upskilling the whole supply chain. Because as the previous speaker said, there is a lot of technology, a lot of bunch of technologies with different majorities, and nobody will do change if they don't see the benefit or if they don't be forced to do this. For some actors on the supply chain, maybe they prefer to have the same situation as now. They are not ready for doing a change and so on. So what we are doing in Dubai Municipality, as you said, Dubai Municipality was the first municipality in the Middle East to recommend and mandate BIM almost 8 years ago. And that was a kind of soft mandating, just to give a warning or a signal for the supply chain. Be prepared, be ready for new technology, be ready for BIM. And now this year in the pandemic, we were so happy to have a very strategic and important project, which is the Dubai BIM Roadmap project, and also adopting BIM technologies and other technologies for supporting the building permit process. So in Dubai, this project output was, for example, having a strategic 4 years plan for Dubai, to move from the current state to the future desired state, and to put a kind of high-level plan what the government and even the professionals and the companies should do in order to move from the today's situation to the future, how we can start adopting more technologies, how we can reach the digital twin, which kind of communities, educations, upskilling, specialized work group should be established. And beside this BIM roadmap also, we established the local chapter of the Building Smart International, which is the international organization pushing and developing open BIM standard, which can help us to solve interoperability problems and getting people more interacted with each other through standard exchange format like IFC, model view, definition, etc. So the role of Dubai municipality in this way is showing the way, putting a strategic plan, offering some funding for this project, building the base for having a real community of people who can work together in transparent way to develop the output of this project for the further stages. And one of the most important maybe output of this project was having the first official BIM standard for Dubai, with focus at moment on the building permit submission. In 1 year, you cannot focus on the whole stages and all application and use cases of BIM. But we hope, or we think, that when you ask for a good quality of digital model, building information model, when you apply for the building permit submit, you will not do the BIM model only for this purpose. You will be forced automatically to start adopting BIM in the primary design and for construction phase, to start exploring the possibilities and so on. So really, maybe my participation today is the most important. I'm not the best expert in new technology, but just to say about this announcement, about this progress, and to invite all people in the region, not only in Emirates, also other countries, to join the force and to work with us together, and especially for people who are in Dubai, maybe we developed a platform for submitting BIM models instead of drawing or additional to the drawing. The platform is ready. Last week we had the first webinar for the Building Smart. So I invite you people to go to the Building Smart UAE.ae, the website of the local chapter, and look how they can register their interest. And we have a lot of plans for the future. So I believe this is the role of the government, to lead and to show the way.
Thank you, Ali. There's a lot of information there to unpack. Just on the point about building regulations, BIM regulations, or BIM standards in Dubai. When does that come into force? Is that now in force with Dubai municipality?
Yes, soon. I believe soon. Now we are in the phase of testing. And by the way, this standard and this project is not only carried out by Dubai municipality. This was a project funded by a committee which has the responsibility to unify and harmonize the building permit processes among all building permit authorities. So we have on board the Tarakhis, we have on board Dubai DDA, Dubai Development Authority. So at the end, the good news that we have now a unified BIM standard for whole of Dubai, not only for Dubai municipality. We have also this BIM platform for all building permit authorities. And now I expect personally maybe that we need few months, maybe at maximum until the end of this year, to have the standard, how to say, tested, evaluated by the consultants and by experts people, to have the platform stabilized. And then we will see how the the next BIM mandate will be. So now there is a current BIM mandate for building over than 20 floors and a certain area, and for government, hospital, schools. But as I said, until now, it's a kind of soft mandate. It's a kind of recommendation. So the next step will be to activate it, maybe in an optional way, maybe in a step-by-step way, and so on.
And just
and
on
Yes.
On the point about the licensing or the permits. So does that mean once this new standard comes into effect, that every project in Dubai, or at least every government project in Dubai, has to be delivered using BIM to the right standard of BIM? Is that what this means, this new rule?
Yes, if this kind of a project is included in the BIM mandate, and if we are finished, I mean, we will not make any shock in the market. We will not enforce any mandate if we are not ready that both sides are ready for it. So it will be, as I said, optional, step by step, maybe a selected kind of project, selected consultant, or optional way. And we have still a lot of to do by upskilling the internal staff skills in the building permit authorities, offering how to say an educational and upskilling the program for the supply chain and so on. And that's what we hope to do through the Building Smart chapter. At the same time, Dubai municipality is leading also by forming a new working group, a government or semi-government group called Digital Transformation, Dubai Digital Transformation and Building Information Modeling Group. And the responsibility of this group also to lead and harmonize and coordinate government and industry initiatives to have a kind of place to people to meet, to discuss, to initiate a project together, and so on. And
sorry, I'm going to, if you don't mind, Ali, I'm sorry, I'm just going to cut you off a little bit there, because I want to sort of go to we've gone around the group. We've got the government view, and Ali just described the role of the government, the important role of the government. Dr. Khaled talked about the range of technologies. Majid talked about the evolution and adoption, and Theo talked about how he sees the platform side and the data side evolving. So I think we've covered the broad spectrum. And I want to get into some of the details. And Dr. Khaled, if I can come to you first on, I'm interested in some of the challenges in adoption. So I'm thinking here about things like, as Ali said, about regulation and ecosystem, but also skills and then investment, the cost. So where do you see, Dr. Khaled, the challenges in Saudi Arabia adopting these new technologies for its construction projects?
Well, I believe it is not, in Saudi Arabia, it's worldwide. The construction sector is the same everywhere. Let me just give an example of when adopting robotics and drones technology into the construction industry. We can see that the construction industry is one of the least automated industries that features manual intensive labor as a primary source of productivity. And it is surprising that robots have yet to play a significant role. A key obstacle or challenge to this, the adoption of robotics in the construction sector, is that the construction work site itself, robots required a controlled environment and tasks that are repetitive and non-variable. However, as we are now seeing construction sites becoming smarter with the rise of construction technology, is the way in which robots can be programmed and used. So I will give you some examples of how robots and drone technologies can be used within the construction. For example, drones can be used for site safety. We see that some telecommunication companies started to provide this service, and also we see that many startups started to deliver or provide a service to the construction industry, utilizing the drones as one of the robotics type. So drones can monitor sites with use of the cameras to identify any danger areas and give a construction manager a quick view of the site without himself being physically presented in the work site. Also, drones can be used to deliver materials to the site. We can see that nowadays, like the autonomous vehicles can be used to carry out stuff from one place to another, palletizing, depalletizing, pick and place. All of that can be used with the robotics, for example.
Dr. Khaled, on this issue about robotics in construction, I've heard a lot of talk about the need to do modular construction and off-site, build construction in factory conditions and then just assemble on site. I'm guessing that is a much better environment for robotics, where you have sort of off-site prefabrication and modular fabrication. Is that something that you anticipate being an important area?
Well, this is maybe I'm not the right guy to answer this question. You don't have my background in the technology side, but I believe that regardless of the approach of the construction, robots, mobile robots with the manipulators, with the drones, and all different type of robotics can be programmed and utilized to the way that the construction is going on. Yeah. So basically, robots will automate the process regardless of the environment itself.
Now, when you talk about robots, I automatically think about physical robots, machines that look like humans. But robotics can be applied to software, can't it? Design and so is that more of an area where you think it might be applied?
Yes, when we say robot is generic word, but the manipulator to mimic human hands. This is a type of robots. The autonomous vehicle. It's not autonomous vehicle, but carrier vehicle that can go from one place to another using a certain path with acoustical avoidance and all of the features of that small. It is not a big one. It is a small one that costs a couple of thousands of dollars. That to automate the process. It is not as you think of when we say robot. It looks like human, but no, it could be a manipulator, end effector, grabber. It is to automate the task that the human can do. However,
sorry to cut you off. I'm just concerned about time. I'm going to come to Majid just quickly. So, Majid, Dr. Khaled was talking there about drones and autonomous vehicles, and I know that ASGC has invested a lot in using drones over the past few years. So, has that now reached its end point, or do you see a lot more scope for that kind of autonomous vehicles and drones for surveying and that kind of thing, inspections?
Yeah, I think that the opportunities and improvement is endless using the technology. You were discussing something with Dr. Khaled related to the robotic adoption in the construction site and the off-site construction. So it's all about having a kind of decent RODI, return on the digital investment. So how much you are going to pay and how much it will add value. Drones, as an example, we started the implementation like 6 years back in construction. It was like a kind of a small POC. Then we saw the added value of the drone. Since the investment, it was investment and it has a decent return on the business. So for like logistics planning, construction site monitoring, traffic management, sometimes for safety, sometimes to reach areas which is difficult to get. Doing a kind of proper link during the early stage at remote areas with the main roads. So all these are practical implementation of drone construction. I'd like to comment on something Dr. Khaled mentioned and you were discussing with him about robots. Robots, it's a very nice thing, fancy thing to add to construction site, but again, it will come to the return on the investment. It will be very costly. So off-site construction, manufacturing buildings like a Lego and assemble at site could be a new adoption. So it's how to implement the technology and where to add the most value with the decent investment.
So just on a couple of points, one that Theo talked about, which I think is quite interesting to hear your view, Majid. So Theo talked about, we move to platforms and the competitive edge for different companies will be their own applications on top of, or their own, products on top of the platforms. Is that an area, what's your view on that? And does that affect the sort of people that you are hiring? And do you have new departments within your company looking at that kind of development? Yeah,
definitely. And Theo mentioned something about data analytics and the data scientists. Already in ASGC, we have data science working with ASGC since almost 2 years. So we are looking on all these things, linking the technology to the real business through platform. So moving from product or files to a platform, I think this is something normal. It's a kind of normal development. It's not a new technology. This is the normal development of having many staff under the fourth industrial revolution, linking all together to add value. So it has to be connected.
And where do you see the challenges? So I hear a lot about the lack of skills. This is, as Dr. Khaled said, this is a global challenge about data scientists. I mean, are you having any difficulties recruiting, finding the sort of future skill set that's required?
Actually, what we are trying to do, we are trying to hire people not from the engineering background and give them few induction about the engineering things, because we need their involvement not at the engineering level, at their area of expertise. Either it's data, either it's IT, it's something related to the blockchain development and all such things. They are our technical experts, and we are connecting them to the business. So
okay, thank you.
I don't have to reinvent the wheel to do it from the scratch with that engineering.
Okay, thank you, Majid. Now, Theo, if I can come back to you, and I mean, we've got loads of questions that have been coming in for Autodesk, but a lot of people are actually questioning the sort of the relationship between the big tech companies and the sort of encrypted files and the transparency around that side of things, with what your earlier comments about companies building on top of the platforms. Is that an area where you think that's one of the challenges that we have to figure out a way to collaborate better between the tech side and the contractor side, or do you think, how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding the question, I mean, I think as you've seen these platforms get developed, I think you see, governments around the world become a lot more sensitive to their data being readily accessible, and you've seen lots of examples recently of cyber attacks and so forth. So there's definitely compliance and regulatory requirements. We'll see more and more of those, I think, depending on where you are around the world. And I think, but I think on the technology side of that, you're also seeing a lot of advancements around, cybersecurity, encryption, et cetera, to mitigate some of that. So I think the next few years is going to be pretty interesting. I mean, I can tell you that, you see it today. Like if you go to the UK, you have to be, UK Cyber Essentials Plus. If you go to Germany, the expectation is that you're C5 compliant. Or if you go to the US, if you're doing work for the US federal government, it's FedRAMP. So we're already seeing whether it's the data has to be in region or the data has to be, support a certain standard. I think some of those will continue to evolve. And I think once the market feels comfortable that their data is secure, you'll also see that next level of adoption happen, I think. So I think we're kind of in that transition. At the end of the day, I don't think it's if, it's more when.
Okay, and in terms of, I asked you, or I mentioned earlier that I'd like to hear your thoughts on the Middle East as a market. Obviously, the Middle East itself is not a single market. It's lots of different countries. So it's difficult to generalize. But in your view, as Autodesk, with a global view, where are we in the Middle East and North Africa, and particularly the GCC, which is where a lot of the people on today's broadcast will be working? Are we about the same level as we see in Europe or North America, or are we a bit behind? Or, what's your view?
I mean, I think what I see is some of the most, signature projects coming out of the Middle East. And I think the reason for that is because the governments in the Middle East have basically, it started with more softer mandates, and now we're seeing harder mandates, but the government is really committed and invested in accelerating that digital transformation. And I think, we've seen that happen more in the Middle East than even in the US. In the US, really? It was primarily commercial. Yeah, because in the US, governments, it's such a fragmented government setup between federal, state, and local. It's really difficult for, to get BIM mandates. You see BIM mandates at a regional level or an owner level, but you don't generally see it at the country level, versus we see in countries like the Middle East or in Japan or in the UK, where the government has been a lot more proactive in driving, those mandates. So I think, I would say if you benchmark the types of projects that certainly I see submitted every year at the Autodesk Awards, there's always, a bunch of projects from the Middle East that are signature projects. So I would say from a BIM adoption perspective, we definitely see the Middle East up there. I think, to Dr. Khaled's comment, I mean, the construction industry is a fast follower, and I think you'll see, BIM move beyond just the design, and now you're seeing standards like ISO 19650 that really connects the owner to the designer to the contractor, further accelerate the digital transformation in construction.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Ali, you've set out in your earlier comments about you followed on nicely actually from Theo's comments just now. The government, you set out the government's key role in accelerating digital transformation, and you outlined Dubai municipalities' plans. Where do you see the problems, for government? So the government, as Theo said, the governments in this region have clear visions. They want to deliver certain things. They've got great projects, and you've just talked about Dubai municipalities' plans. But it's not going to be plain sailing. Where do you see the sort of the hurdles that have to be overcome?
Well, I think there's a lot of problems, like, as I said, maybe education, upskilling, and also to give people a reason for doing the change. So having a technology itself is not enough. You should show the owner of the building, the developer, the contractor, the consultant, what are the benefits of adopting this technology. And you have to facilitate also an environment for doing this change. You have to put people together to build a standard, and you have also, as a government or as a building permit authority, prepare yourself for this change. You cannot, for example, adopt BIM and ask people for BIM mandate if you are not internally capable of working with this huge data and getting benefit from it. That's why I would like also to say that at Dubai municipality, we are not only like adopting BIM as the only technology. We are trying to adopt any new technologies, but the same like with what Mr. Majid said, like they try as a POC, they try every technology, they work with it. So for example, we are exploring what are the benefits for these technologies for us, like smart inspections method, like building the digital twin of Dubai. So in this project, what I mentioned, Dubai BIM Roadmap, we're also developing tools to move information from BIM to GIS to reach this. But at the same time, we should also see the added value for us. What are the benefits? Which kind of education and upskillings we need to do? And at some obstacles also the regulation that you have to communicate and harmonize with different authorities. You have to plan for this change. You cannot apply any change without also considering the risk and seeing the benefit and so on. And that's why that we hope in the next stage to focus on education, to focus on showing a return of invest for people, and to prepare a good environment for building a community, at least in Dubai, and with looking forward to extend it to other like the whole Emirate or the whole region.
Okay, thank you very much, Ali, for that. If I can come back to Theo, we've got a question here. Now the question says there's a clear line in the past between construction and manufacturing, but that line is thinning. The questioner said, hang on, I've got to get rid of this. That line is thinning. Will Autodesk have a strategy to harvest data from construction CAD and use it for module manufacturing? So I guess that's this kind of moving construction towards the prefab modular thing. What do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've already begun a lot of that work. I mean, actually, if you look at one of the McKinsey reports, I think they're forecasting that 50% of construction will move towards industrialized construction, right? So we're already seeing kind of early stages of that. The Singapore government is actually one of the most progressive governments that's investing in industrialized construction. So what you're going to see, I believe, is, we're already looking to harvest a lot of that construction data. We're using AI and machine learning to get better insights from that data. But what we're also looking to do is essentially, connect our design authoring tools into a constructible process. Okay, so when you talk about modular, today most engineers design with the idea that hey, it's about design intent. But I think we're transitioning now to not just moving towards designing for construction intent, but actually manufacturing intent. And I think one of the benefits certainly that we have as a company is that we've been in the manufacturing space for many, many years. We have a separate manufacturing group. And one of the things we're doing currently is connecting some of our manufacturing tools to our design and construction tools. So I would say over the next several years, you will see very significant movements in that direction.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Now, Majid, just one final question before we have to finish, and it's about drones. So the question says, how is ASGC facing the challenges and risks of having its own drone solutions? How are they going? How are you doing with things like permits and data analysis? So I guess it's a question about challenges.
Yeah. I can say proudly that ASGC is one of the early adopters of drones. We are using drones since almost 6 years right now. So we started with the authorities to see how to implement. When we went to visit authorities to see what we want to say, we want to implement drones in construction, it was totally new. So we asked them what would be the procedure. Everything is well regulated here in Dubai. You have to go to the Dubai Civil Aviation, get their approval. You have to get official training and permit for the drone operators. Your drone should be licensed. There is a map of Dubai of the green and red zones where you should fly your drone and where you cannot fly. And everything is recorded, and you provide a copy to the Dubai Civil Aviation. If there is any other regulation that should be a representative with the drone pilot there, we are following these things. So now everything is very well regulated. So. Okay. How we are dealing with the challenge and risk, I can say clearly now, no challenge and risk. It's normal risk like every day.
Excellent. Well, it's a fine point to end on, because I think one of the themes that's obviously critical going forward is that it's not just about contractors operating in isolation. It's not the government in isolation. It's not the tech companies in isolation. It's an ecosystem, isn't it? And I think what you just said there about drones and working with the Civil Aviation Authority, that highlights exactly that sort of ecosystem. Yes. So then I'm going to have to bring the conversation to a conclusion on that point. Thank you very much to all four of you for your time today. I know that we had some sound problems at the beginning, so I do apologize to everybody for that. Hopefully we overcame those issues. Thank you to the panelists for your time. Thank you for your questions. We have not been able to answer all of the questions, but I will circulate the questions to the panelists, and perhaps they can reply privately where it's a question for them. So I'm bringing this to a conclusion. The next session at the virtual summit, the Smart Construction Virtual Summit, will cover data center construction. So it follows on from this theme about data platforms and the speed of moving data around and the accuracy of capturing and analyzing data. So the next session is on data center construction, which Theo already talked about, the Autodesk's plans in that area. This will be on stage 2. So if you go to the left-hand side of your screen, you can see there is a stages icon, the second icon from the top. Click on the stages icon and select stage 2, and that will take you to the panel discussion on data center construction. So stages icon, stage 2, and we'll see you there in just a moment. Thank you very much for being with us for the past hour. Have a great day.
Thank you.